Excellencies, friends and colleagues, I'm especially pleased to welcome you here to the ILO at this unique moment. As most of you know, this year marks the centenary of the International Labor Organization. For 100 years, the ILO has pursued its constitutional mandate for social justice and decent work. The Constitution urges universal social protection as an integral component of social justice and decent work. And we're delighted that we can start our second century with all of you coming together around a global commitment to achieving universal social protection by 2030. Today, despite impressive progress in building social protection or social security systems in many countries, more than half the world's population still has no access to at least one social protection benefit. That's an astounding 4 billion people, a number that underscores the work we have to do in a short amount of time. And if we consider the whole range of social protection areas, the 9 branches, from child and family benefits to old age pensions, only a third of the world's population is covered. So there's a lot to be done. I want to thank you for coming here today to share your experiences about how we can, and in fact, how we must, achieve progress and accelerate our progress towards making the human right to Social Security a reality for everyone, and to make sure we achieve universal social protection by 2030. This is what we are jointly committed to change with the Global Partnership for Universal Social Protection to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. A mouthful, but USP 2030 for short. The global commitment embodied in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda could not be more clear. Universal social protection is indispensable for preventing poverty and reducing inequality, for facilitating access to health and education, promoting gender equality, and achieving decent work. Over the past years, in recognition of the importance of social protection, an increasing number of UN agencies and other development partners have come together in the urgent effort to provide adequate protection for everyone around the globe. And this is where USP 2030 comes in. Launched by the World Bank, the ILO, and many other partners during the UN General Assembly in September 2016, the Global Partnership for Universal Social Protection supports countries in building strong, equitable social protection systems for all. We share a vision for a world where anyone who needs social protection can access it at any time. Today, the members of the Global Partnership call on all countries to live up to their commitment to develop nationally owned social protection systems for all, including social protection floors, as agreed in the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. Universal social protection is a human right and a key to sustained, inclusive economic and social development for individuals, for communities, for nations. Many countries have made major progress towards universal social protection, often combining social insurance with social assistance. We're looking forward today to hear more about country experiences in closing protection gaps, including for workers in the informal economy, people in rural areas, persons with disabilities, migrants, and indigenous peoples. We look forward to learning from you throughout the day about your innovative solutions to reaching universal social protection against different life cycle risks, including old age, disability, maternity, work injury, unemployment, sickness, or the inability to earn sufficient income to ensure the well-being of all family members, especially children. Some of these country experiences have also been collected in a volume of universal social protection country cases, and this is available on the table in the room. I also commend this to you in the online version at USP2030.org. The ILO Constitution warns us that poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere. While governments are best placed to find innovative solutions to extend social protection, the international community also has a key role to play. Development partners can act as accelerators to roll out successful experiences. We can provide support to strengthen national capacities, and we can engage in partnerships, such as this one, to strengthen coordination of the various efforts to reach universal social protection by 2030. We've come a long way in 100 years in making social protection one of our highest priorities, and we've been able to come our differences and genuinely join forces to build this strong partnership for universal social protection. Because we understand the power of solidarity, working together, we will be ever that much more successful. Together, we have to ensure that it will not take another 100 years to cover the 2/3 of the world's population that is not yet adequately protected. We've set ourselves the ambitious goal of reaching universal coverage by 2030. Colleagues, we have 11 years to turn this ambition into reality. So let us work together through this global partnership, USP 2030, and make this happen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I feel very pleased and honored on behalf of the World Bank and myself to be here with you and co-open this very, very important USP 2030 conference, which promises so much for all of the people in the world and for us. I have a strong sense that we need universal social protection now more than ever. A stronger, ambitious role for governments will be indeed key in helping societies adapt to 21st century challenges in labor markets, technological advances, demographic and other wide-ranging trends. And those challenges can only be achieved in partnership. USP 2030 embodies a model of how we can really rally and galvanize our best skills and expertise to support countries as they build social protection systems that reach everyone, including in line with national capabilities and while ensuring adequate support according to needs. I have a sense that we are all motivated now to really to leap forward, but there are so many things to discuss. There is a shifting ground. We have new reports on the future of work from the ILO, from the Global Commission, and from us, the World Development Report 2019 on the changing nature of work. So the land is shifting, and we need to be clearer than we are now on what coverage means. What are we aiming at? What's the depth of coverage we want to achieve in addition to the coverage itself? I think this event offers a precious opportunity to share evidence and practices on universal social protection systems. I look forward to our distinguished speakers in this panel and then during the rest of the day as well. Our distinguished speakers will reflect on how universal social protection contributes to sustainable social and economic development, as well as the realization of human rights. They will also show on the significant progress made by many countries in extending coverage, as well as on the role that development partners can play in supporting countries to accelerate progress towards universal social protection. So we have a lot to do today, and I am very pleased to introduce to you our distinguished speakers in the first panel, opening panel. I introduced them all in a row, and then we will have an honor to listen to them. Our first speaker will be second to my right, Mrs. Michelle Bachelet, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. She will be followed to my far right by Mrs. Marjeta Jager, Deputy Director General for International Cooperation and Development from the European Commission. We are missing one panelist, Gabriela Ramos. I introduce her now, and we'll be waiting for her. Oh, this is Gabriela coming. Perfect timing, Gabriela. Couldn't be better. Please. On this side, yeah. So, Gabriela just entered the room, Chief of Staff and Sherpa to the G20 from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. We hope to be joined on video by Mrs. Sharan Burrow, General Secretary from the International Trade Union Confederation. And really, last but not least, our speaker immediately to my left, Mr. Roberto Suarez Santos, Secretary General from the International Organization of Employers. With that, without further ado, I would like to ask Ms. Bachelet to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished chairs, distinguished fellow panelists, excellencies, colleagues, friends. Well, it is an honor to speak at this conference and to participate in this effort to ensure social protection for every human being. I'm here as a High Commissioner of Human Rights, but also as former President of Chile twice and also former Minister of Health. So we deal with a lot of social protection issues. And I was also the chair of the first group that the ILO established on social protection in 2010. So if you can, I tell you all of this just to say that social protection is in my DNA, not only in my heart, but it's in my DNA. So the Global Partnership for Universal Social Protection to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals is an exceptional initiative in support of one of the essential commitments of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The partnership has shown that social protection is an essential tool for reducing poverty and a fundamental human right. What is the goal of development? It is to improve the well-being of every member of society. People are not simply the how of development. They need to be the why of development. They are what development is for. True development generates great social justice, reducing inequalities, which erase the fundamental rights of those who are poor or marginalized. So this is the core message at the 2030 Agenda. It is about including everyone with no one left behind, and indeed a priority on reaching those furthest behind. It is about rooting out and correcting the causes of poverty, the multiple human rights violations that deprive people of power, of control over resources, of a voice in the government, economy, and society. The 2030 Agenda is a roadmap for practical and detailed measures which seek to improve our support for the universal human rights of every person, including every individual's right to development. It is an opportunity to defeat poverty, to lift discrimination, level out power imbalances, and realize rights. So our work today will mostly focus on Sustainable Development Goal 1.3, which aims to implement social protection systems and measures for all, and particularly to achieve substantial social protection coverage for the poor and marginalized. SDG 1.3 flows directly from Article 22 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, laying out the right to social security. That right includes access to adequate and affordable health care and income security for the elderly, unemployed, sick, injured, for people with disabilities, in need of maternity care, or in other situations of vulnerability so that they can retain their fundamental right. These are profound and foundational commitments. ILO has done a tremendous job in researching and showing evidence that even the poorest countries can afford a universal social protection system. through the social protection floor approach in the past. For example, an ILO study from 2017 indicated that a social protection system including allowances for all children, maternity benefits for all women with newborns, benefits for all persons with severe disabilities, and universal old age pensions cost an average just 1.6% of GDP. A range of developing countries have already established universal social protection, and many of our speakers today have experience of setting up measures for social protection in resource-challenged situations, as I do. We can speak to the very powerful effect these systems can have in curbing poverty and marginalization, reinvigorating the economy, and upholding human dignity. There are also wide-ranging ripple effects which extend across society. Human rights are the drivers of peace, security, confidence, resilience, and public trust. If you see any conflict in the world, in the base of those countries you will find inequalities, that through social protection systems you can deal with many of them. Inclusive, participatory societies benefit from the skills of everyone. And when essential services are provided, such as adequate and accessible health care, education and housing, everyone reaps massive economic, political, and social benefits. Conversely, societies which exclude groups of people from essential opportunities and resources are holding back the ability of the entire nation to develop to its full potential. And this is something that when I was at UN Women, we used to speak why women should be given all the opportunities, not to lose that half part of humanity. And because South America is a place in the world that loves football, I will always use the message that you will never win a game in football if you play it only with the half of your team, of the players, isn't it? So the same happens for women. If you only include men in the society and not women with all the contributions they can give to the society, we'll be losing a very important part of the talents and the capacity and the skills. The same happened with the people who have been included for many historically. We will, if countries don't include them, they will be losing that whole potential, that whole possibilities and capacities. So when you have societies that exclude people from all these opportunities, this violation of fundamental economic, social, and cultural rights breed grievances and tensions that are deeply corrosive for social harmony and can give rise to conflict. Excellencies, 821 million people go hungry every day, according to FAO. Youth unemployment is rising. 70 million young people were unemployed in 2017. Short-sighted austerity measures are eroding social protection systems with short-term cost-saving measures that ignore human rights obligations and commitments to realize the SDGs. We need to encourage national leaders to ring-fence budgets to ensure that rights are promoted and that essential services remain accessible, even in the case of budget cuts. To take one example, social protection measures are essential to combating youth unemployment, generating access to further education, improving skills relevant to labor markets, and securing rights to health, food, water, sanitation, education, and housing. And being a former president, when you know that you cannot expand your budget very much, you have to define your priorities. And if you're really convinced that human beings are essential and your people are essential, you can prioritize those resources in your budget. Another example, social protection can enable people with disabilities to gain independence and greater participation in society, including their employability. But only 27% of persons with severe disabilities worldwide receive a disability benefit. Almost two-thirds of the world's children, I'm talking about 1.3 billion, are not covered by social protection measures. 71% of our fellow human beings are either not protected or only partially protected by social security systems. Even in countries with universal pension coverage, the level of benefits is often insufficient to push older people out of poverty. So this is particularly true for older women who have invested years of their lives in caring for children and older parents. Social protection policies also need to promote equality between men and women, instead of deepening the imbalances between them. So the numbers are disturbing and signal that we must urgently step up our efforts to get back on track if we want to achieve the SDGs, particularly zero hunger, decent work, and universal social systems protection. I wholeheartedly join you in calling on governments, civil society, organizations, and social and development partners to join this global partnership and to work towards truly universal social protection. We can afford to enable everyone to live in dignity and enjoy this fundamental human right. We have the tools, and my office stands ready to support you in this vital endeavor, so you can count on me on this partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bachelet, and we now move to Mrs. Marjeta Jager from the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, chairpersons, Michelle, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. It's an enormous honor and pleasure to be part of this distinguished panel, and I'm humbled to sit next to Michelle. But first of all, let me thank ILO for hosting us, and let me thank the OECD for co-organizing this important conference. As you may all know, the social protection represents a key policy area for the European Union, internally and externally. And we believe that the social protection as the multi-sectorial policy instrument indeed needs a global vision. So my first message is we need a global vision, and we believe that USP 2030 has a chance and great potential to be that vision. We believe also that social protection is a key element of national strategies to promote human development, political stability, and inclusive growth. You know the coverage gaps, and they are all associated with significant underinvestment in social protection. I'm not going to repeat everything that was said before, so I will try to leave you with a couple of important messaging. So for many years, the Commission has supported countries over the world to build up and reinforce their social protection system and to make them really inclusive and sustainable. And currently, we are running social protection program in 26 countries with the different aid modalities in a number of over 1 billion euros, half of that in the budget support modality. We believe that also the country buy-in of the global vision is extremely, extremely important. So therefore, our conference today, it's another milestone and hopefully contribution to that vision. I'm very pleased to see so many here of you, and I would say that under the leadership of our current global program, we were delighted to announce that with the same implementing partners, our 20 million global program on improving the synergies between SP and FPM includes all members of the USP partnership. And we are especially delighted and dedicated that this new program is our contribution to USP 2030. But as said before, we need a partnership to make it work. And that is a partnership that needs believers, and we believe in social protection. So let me reaffirm our strong commitment to this global initiative and to share upon common vision, as I said before. In this respect, USP 2030 embarks on new ways how to design and strengthen national social protection systems in cooperation with and supported by leading international and bilateral development agencies and like-minded partners and CSOs. Considered effective, the partnership will address social protection system strengthening at the global, regional and country level at the same time. It's very important that this goes hand in hand. For this, it needs to take a comprehensive approach that addresses all aspects of social protection and establishes good articulation with other national, regional, and global socio-economic strategies and partnerships, like universal health coverage, GP, GF, etc., etc. We need this partnership to work, so we need to build an advocacy beyond the development and humanitarian cooperation sphere. We also need to have a frank discussion about the governance. And I will conclude by saying that a part of the joint vision that we believe this global initiative has, implementation must go hand in hand at global, regional, and country level in order to make a change for 4 billion people that are left underprotected. And to buy into this vision, I would say international forums and strategies need to have a more formal mandate and more permanent structure. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Madam Jager. We are now moving on, as per the agenda, to OECD, Mrs. Gabriela Ramos.
Thank you so much, Misha. Thank you, Deborah. Great to be here, and I have to say that there is no protection against a delay in the airplanes, but I'm so glad to have arrived in time to share with you this amazing panel. Presidenta Bachelet, fenomenal verla aquí. President Bachelet, who brought the Chile to the OECD and changed the face of the OECD. I remember all of us quote you, Presidenta, because now everybody says what you said when Chile joined. You said, I'm not joining a rich man club, I'm joining a club of best practices, and we're very proud of what you just described there. Great to partner with all of you on this question of social protection systems. It's a very essential part, as the predecessors have said, of the SDGs, of the 2030 agenda, but it's also so important in the context we are living now. In the context where people feel completely unsecured, in the context in which vulnerabilities have increased, inequalities have increased, not only of income but also opportunities, wealth, and we really need to take a great look at how do we build up protection systems and social policies that help us advance in much more egalitarian and fair outcomes. But more than that, and the OECD, of course, we are the house of analytics and evidence, we are sure that this is an important element of the agenda for inclusive growth. So my main message is social protection systems are not something you invest once you have developed the economy. You need to invest on social protection system to advance that development path. But it's not the way we see it now. People are always thinking, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, and first I need to become developed, and then I will move into producing better protection systems. We need to change that narrative. We need to build a business case. We need to use the examples that we have. Brazil's social assistance programs have significantly reduced inequalities and have reduced poverty gaps by 23%. Efforts like Germany, who is providing now 100% of child benefits, is really boosting even female participation, which is very difficult. But we are really lagging behind, and we know social protection are not universal, not even in all the OECD countries. But still, in 2018, public social spending in OECD countries amounted to 20% of GDP on average, while in developing countries it was much lower. In Asia and the Pacific countries, it's only 7% of GDP. And then we need to think about the effectiveness of those expenditures. But even the levels are very low, and they result in far from universal coverage. Only 45% of the global population is covered by at least one social benefit. Adding to this is that most of the world employed population, over 60%, or that is 2 billion people, work in the informal sector, which means they often cannot access social protection measures. In developing economies, 90%, like Africa and Asia, 90% of people in the informal economy are participating in the formal economy, compared to 18% in the developed countries. And I have to say, in my own country, Mexico, we are looking into these issues. I completely completely agree. There is a gender angle. There's always a gender angle in these agendas. Even in those countries that have very well-developed social protection systems are not including this question of how women having cut-offs in their careers because of family responsibilities or having a very different trend in terms of their careers are not really looking after. And sometimes you finish with women that have worked all of their life but that have no pensions or protection when they are getting into the old age. So we need to understand how do we advance formal employment systems to look into the needs of specific groups in our societies like gender. But we also need to look at new forms of employment. This is creating a lot of insecurity, the future of work. We have developed social protection systems that are linked to the job and not to the people. And I see the G7 here, our leader in the employment area, and we need to think how are we going to be looking at the digital revolution and allow for people to transfer the benefits from one place to the other. There are many other challenges, but the whole point is to really look at how do we ensure that these protection systems are linked to people and not to jobs, and how do we engage the private sector to look into their contributing also to this goal. Main messages from the OECD analysis: first, expand social protection to vulnerable and informal workers. It's important to enroll them in contribution schemes such as health, pensions, unemployment. Great challenge, but we need to continue pushing for this agenda. Of course, this encourages formalization, provides social and labor rights, and can help establish national health insurance and also provide the certainty and security that our people need. Second, continue to expand the impact of conditional cash transfers, not only as a poverty alleviation measure, but also to look at how you can link them to the opportunities that can be provided to kids that have already been enrolled in school and move up into the ladder of better opportunities. And third, governments need to ensure equitable and sustainable financing for social protection. This needs to be a priority, potentially through better tax collection, and in that front the OECD, as you know, had been working with the G20 to fight tax evasion or tax avoidance, but of course we also need a lot of measures to ensure integrity and that the money is well spent. We are here to join partnership with the ILO and joint partnership with of course with the European Commission and with all the participants in this conference. We are going to be issuing a report that is, can social protection be an engine for inclusive growth? We're trying to build this business case in which we encourage politicians and we encourage policymakers to think about social protection as an investment for development and not the other way around. We are also working to define a better understanding the aspects of the future of work, the digitalization of our economy, the platform economy, the Uberization of our jobs, and how can we adapt social protection systems to address non-standard forms of employment, including, as I said, in the platform economy. And we're also carefully working with countries, particularly to develop tailored recommendations, because of course no one size fits all. We need to look at the context. We need to look at how countries can develop their own systems. We're working with Cambodia, with Indonesia, with Kyrgyzstan, and this is co-financed by the EC, and I want to thank Marjeta for their cooperation. In conclusion, it's a must. I think it's a must. It's a must. It has always been a must. It was the roadmap in the SDGs. It's something that we all committed at the international community. But more and more, the recent developments of our fragmented societies call us to enhance our efforts to really look at how we can advance this kind of protection and how can we help the most vulnerable to really feel that they are taken care of and that they have some kind of support that will help them when they face difficult circumstances. So join our armed forces, and very glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and we look forward to the conversation and to the outcomes of this good conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. I am actually very grateful to you that you brought the tax perspective into our discussion, because it is high time to look at expenditures and revenue raising at the same time. And the ambition of fulfilling USP 2030 agenda depends critically on how successful OECD is and the whole G20 is in the base erosion and profit shifting agenda which you mentioned. So it is very good to have both sides here under the discussion. I think in a good tripartite tradition, it's high time now to move to our social partners, and we expect now to have Mrs. Sharan Burrow from the ITUC on her video message, and I'm looking at the colleagues in the Secretariat asking them to make it happen.
Delegates, I very much regret not being able to be with you today. This is a very, very important meeting. Social protection, universal social protection, and indeed minimum living wages provide the basis of a floor of dignity for the world's people and the world's economy in terms of stability. We are approaching an age of anger. You can see social discontent all around the world, and we face critical challenges. We face increased conflict, historical levels of displacement, inequality is at an all-time high, and yet the world is 3 times richer in GDP terms than it was just 20 years ago. So when we talk about universal social protection, it's affordable. It's definitely affordable. Calculations show that just 0.23% of the GDP of the world would provide for universal social protection floors. We have 10% of the world's GDP locked up in tax havens. You can see that financing, whether it's possible initially at the national level or indeed at the global level for a period of solidarity support, is possible. It's a matter of political will. It is unacceptable that 70% of the world's people have no or inadequate social protection. It's also unacceptable that governments are rolling back comprehensive social protection measures in the developed world, because this is undermining people's capacity to live with dignity, and with all the people of the world who are feeling that level of uncertainty, of desperation, it's fueling social distress. We can tell you that in addition to the majority of the world's people who have inadequate or no social protection, 84% tell us that the minimum wage is not enough to live on. If we are going to see the recommendations of the recent ILO's Commission report met, then we need to make sure that the fundamental labour guarantee, human and labour rights, the right to safe work, the right to universal social protection and a living wage, that these things are delivered in a renewed social contract. We need more than that, of course. We need to make sure that we are sharing prosperity through collective bargaining, through social dialogue that will deal with the just transition measures, vital, so vital for both rapid technological change and the threat, the incredibly immediate threat of climate change and the associated disasters. There is no doubt, though, starting with universal social protection. Ratify Convention 102 and of course, Universal Social Floors 202. 102 and 202, those standards of the ILO are the basis. But we can't stop there. We have to move very quickly to put in place not small measures, not safety nets, but indeed comprehensive social protection floors. The Sustainable Development Goals call for just that. Agenda 2030 must be met, and we are not making enough progress. So the ITUC stands with you all to deliver universal social protection for everyone. And the global partnership is a very important part of that struggle. We thank you. We will be there to support the ongoing work that the partnership does. Of course, we are represented with you today, and again, my apologies, but there is nothing more important for the dignity of the world's people, for social stability, indeed for basic economies, than universal social protection. Let's make it happen.
Finally, our last but not least speaker this morning comes from the International Organization of Employers, Mr. Roberto Suarez Santos. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Dear participants, I'm very pleased to address you this morning, and it's not just pleased because participating in this event, but also because of joining this initiative, which we find especially relevant and especially pertinent. I want to thank the organizers, of course, OECD, World Bank, ILO, and all those that have been involved in this good démarche. Because at the end of the day, the objectives of the SDGs are objectives that are also shared by business and by employers. And I would like just to refer to that as a complement of what others have said. We in IOA will be making our centenary next year. We were created when the ILO was created. We are now more than ILO, but at the end of the day, when we are reminding why we were created, we thought, well, it was not just to defend free enterprise, which is our main value, free market, but also because of a social commitment. At the end of the day, ILO also was created because of an initiative of industrialists 100 years ago. They believed that there are some social values that make a difference in terms of competing field, but also in terms of making a better world at the end of the day. And that's what we also have to refresh and renew. And that's also our commitment, which I want to bring here. In our DNA, Madame Bachelet referred to the DNA. We also have this DNA, this kind of social commitment. And to some extent, what we also try is that our network, which is an important network of 150 independent business organizations in more than 140 countries, also take it with them. Sometimes, I have to say, it's challenging, but it's getting there. And when we talked about social protection schemes, when we talk about universal social protection, when we talk about social protection floors, we talked about individuals, we talk about workers, but let me recall why social protection is important for us, for business. And it's not because businesses are the main funders of many of the social protection systems. It's not because social protection schemes have a financial component, which is not minor at all. It's not also because companies' sustainability and CSR programs play an important role. It's more and more because, and I think that you, Madame Ramos, referred to that, we are in the era of the future of work. We are in the era of a new reality in which individuals and companies are affected. Now, this fashionable world in a disruptive manner by the digital era, by artificial intelligence, and we have all data of how many jobs will be affected by this digital reality, how many jobs will disappear and how many jobs will be created. But also the way we are working is completely different, and I can witness that from a personal and organizational perspective, and also the way we make business is also changing. And that has to do with the capacity of social protection schemes to anticipate these realities. Being able to change jobs, being able to change tax, being able to strengthen the competence of individuals and the competence of companies will make a huge difference. This is about safety nets. This is about social stability, which is important for business. But it's also about promoting efficient transitions. It's about competitive economies. It's about proper business environment. It's about successful business stories. Social protection schemes that are efficient have to do also with individuals struggling to keep their business alive. Sometimes SMEs that have strong difficulties to create wealth, to create decent jobs in the middle of challenging environments, sometimes in developing economies with huge informal economies. Many of these workers and many of these companies will more and more depend on social protection schemes which work and which are efficient. And we need all to act together and in a very responsible manner. I mean, it's time to be ambitious, but it's also time to be very responsible. Not just words at the end of the day. What we have to say is what we have achieved and what we are delivering in the very short term. We will not insist enough on this. For that, we need to focus. We need, first of all, to focus on those that are needing more assistance. Those are more vulnerable. We need also to focus on those that need really to encourage employability, to provide individuals with a great sense of security, but supporting them to move from job to job when it's needed, and to also have access to some basic safety nets. This is also about learning attitudes. This is also about soft skills, and social protection schemes have a role to play. We think also the social protection schemes will need to be much more sustainable, and we will not make us a favor if we ignore this reality. The fact that the demographic changes in many economies are bringing us important challenges. I'm not going to give you the figures or dependency rates, all age dependency ratio, but it's sometimes a little bit scary, I would say. Okay, so we need also to act responsible on this matter. And we also need to learn from those countries that have already made a successful journey in developing social protection schemes, or those that are facing sustainability challenges and have learned also from their mistakes. The new building systems of social protection need to learn from those lessons. Overall also, I don't want to enter into the debate whether we need sustainable economic growth first and then to develop social protection schemes, but there is a reciprocity there. I think that we are all, at least on our side, we are convinced that without economic sustainability, we cannot have social protection schemes, but there is also social protection schemes that help to have social stability and also helps also to increase consumption, also to increase also and to create a good dynamic for economies. But we don't need to forget that. We need to explore different funding options with no prejudice, because sometimes we are very ideological on that, including efficient private schemes on the second and third pillar that have already worked quite well. We don't have to be dogmatic on that. Mm-hmm. We need more information. We need sometimes accurate evidence. Sometimes that's missing, telling us what works and what doesn't. And I think that many of our organizations here have many things to say, and we need to build on that. We need cost-benefit analysis and impact assessment, real impact assessments that sometimes are costly, but are worth doing. And finally, and not least, we need to better engage the private sector, and we need to better engage the social partners. We are now strengthening the tripartite component also on the UN reform. We want to insist on that. And this is not about mere formal dialogue, but about bringing the practical concerns of workers and the practical concerns of business and employers in order to build systems that have an impact and are sustainable. This is often not the case. So please count on our engagement. And we are happy and looking forward to learn from this exchange and also to build a partnership that delivers. Thank you for your attention.
First, I want to thank all of our panelists today for their very rich and thoughtful comments about the need for social protection across the world. As you can see from the remarks from our distinguished panelists, we have a commitment of many governments, but not just governments. We have a commitment from workers' organizations, from employers' organizations, from business, from international organizations, to achieving universal social protection. We've all spoken about the urgency of sustainable social protection systems. And that's one of the issues that I hope we'll be able to address in the forthcoming panels as we learn about experiences across the world in establishing social protection systems because of the smart policy choices that have been put in place. You've heard today about the case for social protection as a matter of development, as a matter of sustainable enterprises, as a matter of human dignity, as a matter of the future of work, and as a matter of global peace. So this is the spectrum of challenges that we face as we try to build social protection systems that are sustainable for all in many different economic circumstances. The gaps that are evolving as a result of the changing world of work are being layered on top of existing gaps in social protection coverage. So our challenges are even more urgent than they were perhaps when we began Universal Social Protection 2030. So I encourage you to listen carefully to the lessons that our next panelists throughout the day will be able to give you, and to think creatively and critically about how to establish universal social protection around the world.